Alright, today we're going to be going back to Photoshop. We're going to be moving around to some of the different programs. We're going to basically be doing a lot of art projects now. And now that we know how to use all the different basic software, Photoshop, InDesign, Illustrator, and Animator. So today we're going to go back to Photoshop and we're going to learn how to take a photograph and turn it into comic book-like art. So basically we're going to start off with this photograph and we're going to make it look like a frame out of a comic book. So how are we going to do that? Okay, so the first thing that we want to do is once you've opened the Orbit Start document, go ahead and right click, and over here we want to convert to Smart Object. So this creates our Smart Object, which is going to allow us to do a lot of different things with it. Alright, the next thing that we want to do is create a new layer from our current layer. And there's a couple different ways you can do this. You can just drag this down into the new layer object icon, or you can hit Control and J on your keyboard and you see that it created a brand new layer. So I'm going to turn off my old background layer and I'm going to rename this background, and I'm going to call this one lines. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to do in order to make this into the lines that we want is we're going to come up here to Filter, and we're going to go down to the Filter Gallery, and we're going to choose Poster Edges. And I'm going to move this into the center so you can kind of see what I'm doing. And we can kind of play with the thickness of the layers of the edges, right? And you can play with the intensity of the edges. I want to be able to see the edges, but I want it to be pretty smooth. You can also play around with the level of posterization, right? You can kind of see different levels of posterization, right? And so there's not one correct or one right or one wrong way to do this. Alright, I kind of like this first start. Alright, so we're gonna start with that. The next thing that we're gonna do is we're going to change this now so that it actually turns into lines. So we're going to come up here to the image menu and go to Adjustments, and we're going to go down to Threshold. And under Threshold now you can see that it turns it into kind of actual line art like you would actually see an artist draw. And it automatically sets it right here in the center. So I want to make it more obvious liney, right? So I don't want to go that way, so I'm going to go a little bit in this direction so we can see the lines a little bit better. And now we have the lines that we're going to use to make our artwork from. Okay, and then the last thing that we want to do is go back over here to Filter, and we're going to go down here to Stylize. We're going to choose Oil Paint, and what this does is it's going to help us smooth out, right? So if I click here, right, you can see that this is helping us smooth out. And I can make these lines less or more smooth. And I can change the cleanliness, see that's not very clean, to more, to probably a little overly stylized over there. Kind of looks good. And this shows the length of the strokes. These are kind of like really short strokes. These are much longer strokes on this side over here. And the same thing with the detail. You know, more or less detail. And if your lighting is turned on, go ahead and turn that off. Uncheck that box. So when I click that, it should smooth out my lines here, make it look much more artistic looking, more artsy than it was before. Okay, so that's our first step. Now we want to create the color. So I'm going to turn off this layer. I'm going to go back to my background, and I'm just going to drag this, or use Control J to make a new layer, and I'm going to call this layer color. So I turned it on. So we're back to our original. And so what we need to do is go back to our filter gallery, and we want to just use that same poster edges. And in fact, I want to use the exact same settings that I used before. Right, you can see it really makes it postery looking. And then I want to do the same thing now with my oil paint under style. I'm going to go to oil paint, and I want to use the exact same settings, right? So that way it's going to match up. It's going to match up perfectly. The color level here is going to match up perfectly with our line level above. So I'm going to turn my lines back on. Okay, so I'm going to turn my lines layer back on. Okay, and I'm going to come up here to this box right here above it, and I'm going to change it from a normal mode to the multiply mode. And what that does is it merges it with the layer below it and lets you see that layer through. So there's just the layer below it. There's the two layers together, right? And so you can see that it makes it look much more animated looking than it did before. Okay, so now what I want to do is make an adjustment layer so that I can kind of control what this looks like. So I'm just going to come down here to this little half and half circle, and I'm going to create a new levels adjustment layer. Okay, and this allows me to affect the brightness, right? And the darkness. So I can affect all those different layers of it. And then the final thing I want to do is a vibrance layer. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to go back here and then choose vibrance. And I can increase the vibrance, make the colors much more popping out, and I can desaturize or more saturation to that. So I could even make this like a black and white cartoon, like the Walking Dead cartoons are, or I could really intensify it and make the colors super pop, like some anime styles have a really intense looking color palette. Okay, and so that's my after, right? So here's what it looked like. Turn all these layers off, right? That's what here's what I started with. That's my before, and then here is my after. Okay, all right, so this is how to create a kind of an animation look from a photograph.